Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Travel Talk Tuesday, November the 16th, 2021. Thank you guys for joining us. And tonight we're having a show about the ancient ruins of Pompeii, which is on the Bay of Naples. And if you can, let me share my screen. Is sharing right now. So let me share my screen and show you kind of where that is. We've dealt with a couple of islands already that are in the Bay of Naples. We've talked about Ischia over here on the west side of the bay, and Procida, and we talked a little bit about Sorrento last week. Now we're just going to take the train about 45 minutes back from Sorrento, going to the ancient ruins of Pompeii, which happens to be just underneath this big mountain, Mount Vesuvius. So let me begin this, and I'll break in here in just a minute and tell you a little bit more about Pompeii. The train that goes around the Bay of Naples is kind of like that arc on the map. And this is the train. It's called the Circumvesuviana, the train that goes around Mount Vesuvius. These guys were really good musicians, and I enjoyed the accordion player and the accompaniment guy. And of course, if they're good musicians, I enjoy tipping them. So here we are at the ancient ruins of Pompeii. Now, Pompeii was a city that was built by the Greeks in 600 BC. And when the Republic of Greece fell and the Romans conquered them, they conquered all the cities as well that Greece held, and especially in the boot of what we now know as Italy. They overtook all of those towns as Greek towns and developed them into Roman towns. So by the time the Roman Empire rolled around 330 or 40 BC, this city of Pompeii was already a thriving city of around 20,000 people or so. And it continued to be that way through the next almost 500 years. And so Pompeii was right on the banks of the Bay of Naples. And at that time, in the 1st century AD, the seaside lapped up to the gates of Pompeii. And with this image that's on the screen right now, you can see the person in red here. This is a walkway that goes to the main city gate. And down here below where the grass is and those steps are going down, that would have been covered with water, and that would be the port or the marina of Pompeii. The marina is called the Porto or Marina of Pompeii. So this gate here, you can see, is the main entrance gate that goes into Pompeii. There's a large gate. As a matter of fact, I'm going to back it up just a tad because there's a video right before it. Let me rewind. Stop it here. A catchy tune. You can see some graffiti there on the train. Almost everywhere you go, you find graffiti in anywhere in southern Italy. But this is called the Porta Marina, the grand gate at the marina. And you can see there's a huge gate here, which is, gosh, I don't know, that person's probably, let's say, 6 feet tall. So, boy, that's 6, 12, 24, 32, 30 something, 36 feet tall or something. And then there's a smaller gate right here. And what would have happened, just like many of the other cities back in those days, this big gate would be closed. At the time the bell rang and the guards went off watch, that big gate would be closed and the smaller gate would still remain open for those who were allowed into the city to return to the city. So that's the huge gate, and this is how you get into the ancient ruins of Pompeii as well. All of this is for real, and nothing's been really reconstructed here because it was covered with over 20 to 30 feet of ash until the early 70s. Hey, David McGuffin here. Today we are at the ancient site of Pompeii. Now, the mountain here behind me, the volcano here behind me, is Mount Vesuvius, and as you can see, it's incomplete because the top blew off of it on the day of August 24th, 79 AD. And there was a huge cloud going of smoke and ash and rocks and pumice and everything going up, mushroom clouds, kind of like we would think a nuclear explosion type cloud looked. It went up over 12 miles into the sky and came tumbling down on this city of Pompeii, covering it with about 12 feet of ash in the period of 24 to 48 hours. 2,000 of the 20,000 residents lost their lives immediately because they were covered with this crashing down ash and were smothered basically and covered with the hot debris. But what you see here left now is the remains of Pompeii 12 feet down. So here we're looking at the forum, and it looks exactly like it did, at least the first 12 feet, as it did in 79 AD. I hope you enjoy this look around Pompeii. I'm excited to show you. As you can see, I'm in a jacket. It's a really nice day in mid-October. It's about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're gonna have a fantastic day looking around. I hope you enjoy a peek into life at Pompeii. I'm standing in what's known as the Basilica, the main public enclosed hall. You can see there's a kind of a central nave going down through here, and then two aisles, an aisle on either side of the nave. These columns that are here are original ones. They date from way before the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD, but this whole place has been covered with ash up until 1750 or so, when it was begun to. So 1750 was when excavations began by the British and others digging down there. They always knew there was something there, but they began to dig in earnest and dig these up. So this is a basilica, as I mentioned in the video here. I wanted to point out to you that the basilica, that word we often associate with a Christian church, because the Romans invented the word basilica, and in that time, it meant the palace of justice for all of the Romans. So some of you I see that are watching me have been to Rome with me, and we've gone to the Forum near the Colosseum in Rome. And there is a huge Basilica of Constantine there that was built about 350 AD. And that was the palace of justice. So people would go there to renew their license plates for their chariots, and they would get marriage license, and that pay their property taxes and that kind of stuff. And so it was a huge building to accommodate the citizens of the area. And this basilica as well is very large, has a central nave going down the middle, two side aisles. So at the fall of the Roman Empire, many of those basilicas that were Roman turned into be Christian churches, and the name was just kept as Basilica and continued on. These columns right there, funny thing, we're talking about 79 AD on August 24th when the eruption of Vesuvius happened, but a few years earlier in 62 AD, there was an earthquake that kind of rocked the whole city of Pompeii, and many of the columns, the original columns in the basilica, fell down, and the roof of the basilica fell down. And these were, at 79 AD, when the volcano erupted, these were the beginning of the brand new pedestals that were being put up in that basilica remodeling process from the earthquake. So you can kind of see that the Roman architectural style was pretty cool, because what they would do is the those are all bricks and mortar. And then it would be covered with a coating of some sort of white, we might call it stucco or something, and painted so it would be nice and gleamy, but it was not all marble. It was heavily fortified with those bricks and mortar. Now here I'm standing next to the Basilica looking through the Forum. And the Forum, I also alluded to the Forum in Rome as well, but the Forum was the main public gathering place. And all of these pedestals like here and where this statue is, replica of a statue here, they would be containing huge megalith statues of gods or important rulers and VIPs in the Roman Empire, gods, and also local rulers as well. And the Forum was a place where everybody came to shop together, to chit chat, to catch up on the gossip, and all of that. Almost at the horizon, there is a temple to Zeus down here. And that's not correct. It's not Zeus. It's Jupiter, a temple of Jupiter. And that temple was the major temple right there in the Forum. And beyond the temple of Jupiter, you can see the remains of the mountain, Mount Vesuvius, with its top blown off. That'll be a characteristic image I'll show a lot in this video. There's Mount Vesuvius. Let me just stop it because you can see. Because if you just take, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but if you just take that mountain and let it go right up like this, that's what the mountain looked like before 79 AD. And so the first time it ever blew its top was then. And it's erupted a few times. I think the latest one is 1964. This is actually a fresco that was taken from Vesuvius during the time of its reclamation. I'm so sorry, taken from Pompeii during the time of its excavation and reclamation, and taken to the museum in Naples. And this is a depiction of what Pompeii looked like before it blew its top. And here's the god Bacchus, the god of wine here. There's a bird up here. I don't know what these snakes or centipedes or whatever, and a bird here. But that's the only image we have of Vesuvius before it blew its top. Now, also in the Forum is an area known as the Grainery, which back in the day was where all the grain, the wheat, and it was when it was harvested, it was stored, ground, and kept for all the citizens of this town of Pompeii. Now, because it had walls that were much taller than the rest of some of the other walls here, a roof has been put above it. And since the late 1700s, a lot of artifacts have been put on display here that were accumulated from the architectural dig here at Pompeii from 1750, and it's still going on because there's huge sections of Pompeii that are not excavated yet. So these are a lot of vases or vessels for oil or for wine. There's a cart, and that's a real cart. So, you know, with a real wagon wheel on it. And so it's pretty cool to see that. Also discovered during this time were cavities within the lava that had come down. And these cavities were where people, there were 2,000 of them that died on that day that were citizens of Pompeii. They died in their tracks, basically. And this particular person, you could see, was laying down on the ground, arm up, and died in place. And over the centuries, the body decayed. and it left a cavity within the lava. And during the excavation, one of the people who were doing the excavation and in charge of that had a great idea of pouring plaster into those cavities, letting that plaster harden, and then you have a depiction of what the last moments of that person's life may have been like. So there's 3 or 4 of them here. You can see it's pretty realistic. Here's one that was just sitting on the ground. Praying maybe. This is a small child that was found. And some more statues and other things that were recovered as well. Let me stop it here. Okay, I'm back full screen. I just going to share my wine because why not? This is not such expensive wine. It's not from the area down in Campania, which is where Naples and Sorrento is. It's from Tuscany, and it's just a mix, a red blend that you get in Tuscany. So that's what I'm drinking tonight, and nothing special with our snacks, just some crackers and cheese, and that's it. So that's what we're doing tonight. And let me move on. Let's see. So here we have one of the streets of Pompeii, again, looking to sort of the north because the Vesuvius is to the north. These are fast food joints. Now, I was telling Leslie before we started tonight that, you know, I have a whole lot of content and video that I shot here in Pompeii just a few weeks ago, but gosh, after a few minutes, it begins to look the same. And the same thing if you were to go and visit Pompeii without having a guide or without having a guidebook or something, you would very quickly become bored of looking at the same thing, which are walls and stone paved streets, and because you don't know what you're really looking at. But with a little guidebook, which is what I had, and some the knowledge that I have read about, my friends and I took about 3 hours there and enjoyed looking around. But I've kind of whittled it down for you because, like I say, everything's going to look the same after a few minutes or so. This is a fast food joint. You can see a counter. I'm standing on the street. You can see a counter with these round pots there that perhaps they would have soup in, and the soup Nazi would be there serving it and all of that, and or whatever. And so there were several of those along this one particular street just off the Forum. This is interesting. There's a whole, I'm gonna back up there because I wasn't able to stop it. There's a whole lot of mosaics, which are tiles that are made into certain images, and there are a whole lot of frescoes. They all have been taken away to this museum in Naples and put it in a protected environment and all are on display. But they have also replicated some of the most important ones. And this is one inside this particular house that has a dog here. This is the front entrance. I'm looking in the front door, and the dog is there. And basically in the Latin, it says, let me look down here and see what it says. Cave CANUM, which means this cave is the house of the dog. Beware of the dog, watch out. And so that was a warning sign, and that's a replica, but that real mosaic, they have dug it up, taken it and put it in place in the museum in Naples. That's the National Archeological Museum in Naples. I don't know if you can even see here, but you can see the chariot tracks in the rocks. See how much it's worn down here? And let me stop right there. normally those, where this young man's standing, those are stainless steel plates that have been put there in recent years for access for those who are physically challenged. But you can imagine them not being there, and there will be stones across the street here, 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 and up to the next sidewalk. And that would be the pedestrians' way to step across the street, their walkway, their zebra crossing, their walkway to walk across the street without stepping in the muck and gunk from all the animals pulling all the carts and everything. That's pretty inventive. And so those were almost at every cross street. This particular place is the largest house in Pompeii. It's about 24,000 square feet, has about 24,000 square feet, and has 48 rooms in it. And it's called the House of the Faun. And the reason it's called the House of the Faun because it has this particular little bronze statue in here in the main courtyard when you enter on these mosaic tiles. And this was not a faun like we would think of as a deer faun, but a faun as in the figure that we know from mythology. And so that obviously is there is a replica. We saw the real thing in the National Museum, Archeological Museum in Naples as well. The House of the Faun. I was recounting, believe it or not, this is still part of the House of the Faun, the big, huge area. This is the outdoor courtyard. And this is a very significant piece of work too. It's called a mosaic on the floor in one of the rooms of the House of Faun called the Battle of Alexander. So Alexander the Great in 333 BC was able to conquer the Persians and overpower them and take over that part, or take over basically the then known world. And so this is the Battle of Alexander. This is a photo of the actual mosaic that is in the museum in Naples. But you can see Alexander the Great is way over here on the left without a helmet or anything on this horse. And then we have all the Ottomans, the Turkish Persians coming up with swords and helmets and all of that stuff. So that's a grand thing, but the original mosaic was recovered there from the House of the Faun. These are grist mills, and you just can imagine that the grain was placed into the top, and where these square pegs, holes are, were big, long pieces of timber, and either a person or an animal was placed on those two pieces of timber and turned that mill around, and the mill would produce the grain and would fall down there on the table area below. And then right next to that were the ovens where the grain would be formed and to loaves and baked right there. So you have your own Panera Bread company right there. Also here is a theater, and this theater was actually built by the Greeks 6 centuries earlier, and the Romans, when they conquered the area, took over and expanded it a little bit. So this particular theater here would seat 5,000 people to watch dramas, plays, and that sort of stuff. They also have a big amphitheater, which is still being uncovered nearby, and that would be similar to the Colosseum in Rome, except not quite as large. Many people think it's about the same size that the amphitheater in Volterra, the one which has newly been discovered and they're continuing to work on, is being uncovered there as well. So about to accommodate somewhere around 15 to 20,000 people. But this is a theater, 5,000 people. Okay, so I'm going to zip through this pretty quickly, but this is an area. Let me get to my notes here. This is an area called the Lupanare. The Lupanare was one small little place, probably about, maybe 20 by 30 feet, tucked back in the middle of nowhere. And it was basically the brothel there in Pompeii. And so you can imagine that when we were here, there weren't so many tourists, but every tourist had to go find the Lupanare and go see what the heck was going on with the brothel area. There were many, many bigger places to look at and more famous places, it was even at this time of year when the COVID-19 restrictions were in place and there were no tourists and everything else, it still was a one-way system that we had to come in from one side, walk through these things. And this particular spot here was one of the beds in the small little rooms of the brothel. And above each of these rooms was a fresco that was kind of advertising what possibly, sort of like a menu maybe, that what you could purchase in that particular room. So I'll leave it up to you, and I'll just let this couple of 3 slides run by, and we'll go on to the next topic. But, it just proves there was a whole lot of hanky-panky and sin going on way back then too. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look around Pompeii. This huge gate here does a great job of framing Mount Vesuvius here behind us. And like I say, thanks for sticking with me and looking around Pompeii and the ancient site that was ruined here by a volcano eruption, 24th of August, 79 AD. Hey, your adventure starts right here with David McGuffin's Exploring Europe from the Bay of Naples and the ancient site of Pompeii. So last week I made flatbread pizza of active yeast or instant yeast. So here's my recipe. 1 teaspoon of sugar, along with 3/4 of a cup of warm water, about 120 to 180 degrees, 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of salt, olive oil, about a tablespoon to 2, and then optional ingredients are a little Italian seasoning and a little garlic salt, about a tablespoon of each. So let's put it all together and see how it works. I've added the teaspoon of salt, I've added the teaspoon of yeast and a teaspoon of sugar to the bowl, and then added the 3/4 cup of warm water. Stirred it up and let it sit for maybe 5 minutes or so. I'll put a paper towel or a kitchen towel over it. And how you know the yeast is working is if you look down and you see bubbles coming up, it means the yeast is being activated and it is working the way it should go. I've got the mixer on low. I'm adding 2 cups of flour. By the way, that's all-purpose flour is what I'm using. However, if you wanted a little more gluten to the mix, you could put in some bread flour. About a tablespoon of olive oil. And a teaspoon of salt. And then I'll let that run until it's mixed, all incorporated and formed into a ball. Okay, this is about done. Let me take it out of the bowl. Just needed a tad, and then I'm gonna let it rest for about 45 minutes. Needed. As a matter of fact, I did not even need it at all. I just gently put it in my hands, formed it into a ball. Then I'm gonna put a towel over it and let it sit there for 45 minutes. So my dough has risen for 45 minutes. I've let it lay out here on the counter with some flour right around it. And then finally kind of pressed it all down by hand. I cut the dough in half, pressed it down by hand, and you can see my fingerprints in there as well. Now I'm gonna put a little olive oil on the top of it just to keep it from drying out and getting soggy when it's in the oven. And then I'll put the topping on it and pop it in the oven. The topping for my flatbread is pretty simple. I've got some little cherry tomatoes, which I've marinated in a bit of olive oil, a little balsamic vinegar, maybe a teaspoon of each, a little bit of salt and pepper, and a little Italian seasoning with some basil there, fresh basil, and mozzarella cheese. And that's going to be the topping for my flatbread. Thinly sliced mozzarella cheese goes on first. Next comes the tomatoes, which have been marinated in balsamic vinegar, a little olive oil, and a little salt and pepper. Next comes a little fresh basil. And finally, a little shredded mixture of mozzarella and Parmigiano Reggiano. Okay, the oven's set at 450. The flat bread is in there for about 10 minutes. I'll make sure I really watch it, and then it should be ready to chow down on. Okay, I'm cooking it on parchment paper just so nothing's good. I'm gonna take it out. Let me put it over here. I don't know, I think that does look pretty good. I'm gonna let it cool for a minute, and then we'll cut it. And that'll be our appetizer for tonight. Let's see how I'm gonna do this. Cut it that way. Kind of in semi pizza slices. I know one thing, it does smell good. This is the first time for me, so it's an experimental recipe. After that cheese cools, I'll pop it in my mouth and let you know how it goes. Okay. And we had that last week on our menu when we were talking about Sorrento. We ate it all, so it was really good. And so tonight, I'm actually getting the oven prepared here. We're having a chicken parmigiana and baked ziti. I'll probably share that recipe with you if I haven't already later on. And so that's going to be our menu for when we finish up with Travel Talk Tuesday. So that's that. And so the next thing I want to talk to you about, just a short little segment, is because I've mentioned several times about the National Archeological Museum in Naples. And, you know, Naples is a huge city that's sometimes it gets a bad rap because of all the mafioso, the crime, the filth, the graffiti, and everything going on. But if there's at least the biggest, I think, attraction to go there is this National Archeological Museum. And along with some relics from Pompeii, there are many, many other things from other Roman cities throughout the Roman Empire. But I'm going to just show you a few little things that we came across because we went there to Naples to that museum just as a day trip about two days later after we visited Pompeii. So let me just explain a couple of things there, and then we'll be closing out Travel Talk Tuesday. So I mentioned to you some of the most important things that are there. I guess there are four types of things. There are mosaics, which these are two. Mosaics, which are small little pieces of tile that are inset into usually the floor, but sometimes the walls. Once all put together and with many different colors and textures, it forms an image. The other thing are frescoes, which are stucco with pigments put into it. And usually the frescoes are on the walls or on ceilings. I guess the most famous fresco that we know of is that in the Sistine Chapel, which Michelangelo did. And then they're also, you wouldn't believe that these guys in Pompeii, way back there in the 1st century, had wonderful vases, pottery, cookingware, earthenware. They also had plenty of blown glass and glass that was just beautiful, along with bronze and brass objects. This is a close-up of a mosaic there. You can see that those little pieces are about contact lens size pieces of tile, and pretty amazing there. I don't know exactly, this was in the home of someone. Another. You know, Naples is not too far across the Mediterranean Sea to Africa. And you'll see a lot of dark-skinned people showing up in a lot of these mosaics and frescoes because they were an important part of the Roman Empire and of being there. So you'll see that a lot as well. This is just a wonderful mosaic in the home of someone, I guess, who lived there. These are crazy things. You can see all creatures of the sea. This is one of the rooms there. I wanted to point out this, like that looks kind of like a rhinoceros, duck, a python, a crocodile, or a Florida gator, who knows what. But you know, we're here in Naples, and in the 1st century AD, but all those animals are known and they're pretty well displayed. So I want to let this run in just a second too, but this is a gabinetto segreto, or the secret room. Now, remember we talked about the brothel there in Pompeii, and there were a lot of artifacts covered from houses all over the place. And evidently they were all kind of works of art that were a little risque. And so when the excavations began in 1750, all of those relics were taken and put in a special place. And when the museum opened, they were put in a secret museum in the secret room in the museum, and only the chosen few, like the nobility and royalty, could come into this secret room and to see what was in there. And that was true up until after World War II. And so the secret room is now open, and we were thankful to be in that museum, and there was hardly anyone there, thanks to, I guess, thanks to COVID-19 and the restrictions. But it was pretty cool. So I'm going to let this run. You can let the images speak for themselves. And then I think we're about done with this. Mosaics. These are mosaics. You can see the North African people in the background. This is a crazy statue that was there on display. Servants. Little things, and then we get to the area where everything is there, and these are things that we're using in everyday life. Look at that silver. I mean, it looks like stuff that my wife's grandmother has, or my grandmother has, and we have put away in our china cabinet in here. It's just beautiful, all silver spoons and vases and everything. Glass. Earthenware, it's beautiful. This vase is one of the most prized objects from Pompeii. A portrait of a family, husband and wife maybe. These statues are some of the examples of what would be in the pedestals there in the forum. And this is the interior main room of the museum with the huge fresco and the outside of the museum there in Naples. And with that said, that's my Pompeii and National Museum look of Pompeii relics. Now, I hope you enjoyed a little look around on that, because I had fun putting together. And believe me, like I said, we spent 3.5, 4 hours almost there walking around everything. But unless you're there, it doesn't really mean a whole lot to you. Let me fast forward to next week. what I'd like to do next week, I see some of you have been traveling elsewhere in the world or in the United States. And next week, I'd like to invite a few of you who've traveled with me throughout the summer and the fall to join me for kind of a discussion about what it's like to travel in COVID times. I know there's a few of you, like I see Ramona is on here. I know Ramona has, I think you told me you were on a cruise on the Mississippi River a week or so ago. It'd kind of be nice to hear about that and what that's all like. So maybe next week, if we can just open up the floor and have 5 or 6 of you on here and talk to you about, or talk to all of us about what our travels were like in these post-COVID times. Well, hoops we had to jump through to go everywhere. But the main thing is we were able to go and experience wherever our destination was and not be stuck at home in our living rooms like we were this time last year. Okay, so with that said, if you guys are interested in doing that, just let me know. And I'd love to have you on next week and have a little talk and everything and chat with me. But with that said, thank you guys so much for being a part of Travel Talk Tuesday tonight. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Tuesday night. Bye-bye.